This is Chris Heasley with the Chris Heasley Show, and we have a very interesting show tonight. We're going to talk about some subjects that cover the national landscape. And with us tonight, we have Will Johnson with United America First. Will, how are you?
Doing good. Happy to be here, Chris.
Good. Glad to have you on the show. We're a show that really focuses on the local level, Houston, Harris County, Fort Bend County. And maybe people in our area don't know you. So tell us a little bit about yourself and about United America First.
Well, I came from California, if I can say California. I came from California to Texas. So I moved from California to Texas 7 years on 4th of July. It was interesting when I left California. I left and drove to Texas. And when I drove into Texas, well, let me back up. When I left California, I was in Arizona and it was an earthquake, a huge earthquake after I left. When I drove into Texas, I got here in the evening and there was fireworks. That's a sign. But anyways, it was pretty awesome. So I've been here 7 years and I started doing activism when Hillary Clinton was running against President Trump. And I just couldn't go for Hillary Clinton. So I started talking on social media. I started talking about my opinion, why I wasn't going to support Hillary Clinton. And being a black man, they were just kind of shocked because no one was like, what are you talking about? You're black. You're supposed to vote Democrat. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. So then I started paying really close attention to President Trump. And be honest with you, I didn't like President Trump. When he was doing The Apprentice, I thought he was arrogant. I thought he was rude. I thought he was just mean. But now I understand his mannerism. I understand why he was doing. He just wants people to do the right thing. Just do the right thing. And that's it. Do your job. Do the right thing. And what we have today is the left, they're not doing their jobs. But for me, I picked up my selfie stick. I started talking about politics. And I've gone from California to Texas. And I like to do a lot of man on the street talking to different people. And it's UniteAmericaFirst.com. A lot of people say united. The country's not united. It's just UniteAmericaFirst.com.
Yeah, I mean, President Trump is really a transformational figure in a way that's never happened before. And, he's trying to transform our economy to a nationalist one. I believe the war agenda is largely going away. But also here in the state of Texas, there's a significant development happening where we sort of see a New York economy being shifted to Texas. Tell me about that.
Okay, so we're talking about the stock exchange.
Yes.
Yeah, this is huge. Yeah, this is huge news. And as I mentioned to you before, that I'm not on the stock exchange. I'm not a day trader, but I find this extremely fascinating simply because of what's happening in New York. You have Mayor Mamdani, which is a known socialist. He'll tell you that he's a socialist, and they're taxing everybody through the wazoo. I mean, you've had multiple millionaires and even billionaires leave New York, going to Texas, going to Florida, leaving New York, which has been the major hub for the United States of America when it comes to the rest of the world. When the rest of the world looks at America, they first look at New York, Statue of Liberty, and then California, et cetera, et cetera. But the stock exchange just opened today in Dallas. They're starting to do trading in Dallas, which is phenomenal. What's going to end up happening is because they're opening up in Dallas now, when you make your trades, you won't have to pay the taxes that New York has applied. So we live in Texas. If you're trading on the stock market and they happen to make that trade in New York, guess what? Your stocks have to pay the taxes on that in New York. But since now it's going to be in Dallas, that's going away.
I mean, that's an amazing development. And of course, I don't want to see New York die. But at the same time, with their punitive measures, and it's not, again, it's not the New York countryside, it's the New York urban areas. And they continue to vote for these leftists that are just penalizing the entire state of New York. New York's beautiful. I don't want to see any Union State die. But at the same time, what are we supposed to do? These punitive measures that they continue to lay on the people, there has to be repercussions. And that's a massive development for the state of Texas.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, New York and the politicians and the leftists, they're actually forcing people to make the change. I mean, how many years the stock exchange was in New York before we were born? And that's, a few years, right? So all of this time, there's been no reason to change it from New York. You have the United Nations there. Again, once the entire world, they look at New York first. So now it's changing from New York to Dallas, which is huge. But this didn't have to happen. They brought it onto themselves. Same thing's happening in California. You've had multiple people leave California, Elon Musk being one of them. These major companies are leaving these blue states and blue cities simply because they're getting taxed through the roof. And you can't maintain a business with that type of heat on you from the local state government.
Okay, that's an amazing development in general, and I think everything's moving in the right direction in that regard. It's refreshing. But one of the things is that's really a trend happening right now is that for our entire lives, we were told, be a good citizen, pay your taxes, you can't fight City Hall. And then what they would do is they would drag out a tax evader once a year, like a Wesley Snipes or whoever, and show us, hey, look what he did. And he's a big A-list Hollywood actor. If we can beat him up, look at what we can do to you, you peasant. And that's been the message for our entire lives. But now we see a paradigm shift of epic proportions where the concept of property taxes is being challenged across the country from Ohio to Texas, where President Trump has eliminated 38,000 IRS agents. The IRS no longer has an enforcement arm. Is that not a sign of massive things to come?
I would say it is. Now, most of us, we just want the IRS to be completely abolished. Before World War I, we weren't paying taxes. The United States of America, the people were not paying taxes because that was the whole point of us being America. We didn't have to pay taxes to the king. But when World War I, World War II took place, they said, well, we need extra money, so we'll just tax the people a little bit just during this time period. And for the most part, we all understood. Right? For Americans, we understood we want our country to be successful. We'll do our part. It goes right along with the whole example of them building that pile up and the young lady goes over there and she dropped her pantyhose in there. Right? All of that comes into play. Well, the problem is that after all of that, they said, well, look at the money that we brought in. Look at the revenue. They're already feeling the pain. Let's continue to have them pay the taxes. And I'm all for President Trump eliminating the IRS. I mean, I understand we need street lights. We have to have the first responders. No one is disputing that. That's not something that we'd want to go away. I think we all would be happy to contribute to that. But the problem comes in when they take the money and then they start spending it on stuff that has nothing to do with helping the people out. That's where the problem comes in.
We're the only country that's taxed. They tax our money. They confiscate our money and give it to foreign countries. They send it overseas. So that's answer number one, because you said we need our roads paved. If we would get rid of practices like that and the 100 and other disastrous policies that we have, we would be able to pave our roads without being taxed to death. But there's one more thing. In my opinion, the foundational issue to our economy more than anything else is the debasing of the currency. And the Federal Reserve allows us to inflate the currency. And I went to business school on the East Coast, and when I went there 25 years ago, you were not allowed to talk bad about the Fed. The Fed was the gold standard. They were the wise elders that would lead us to the right spots. But today, the Federal Reserve is under attack. It doesn't have any credibility anymore, and I think it's an organization that's also being phased out. But my point, getting back to my main point, which is that, again, the biggest issue is debasing the currency. You said we need to pave the roads. Okay, well, let's just not debase the currency, and I think we can pave the roads without taxing people into the heavens.
No, I completely agree. I mean, common sense, right? Taxation without representation. That's all we're asking for. That's all we're asking for. Because, again, we all agree that if we're going to do something in our country, we need street lights because we need organization when we're on the road. We need street signs. We need a sign to say stop, hoping that no one runs it. But we need certain things. First responder, police officers. We need our military. That's not that for me as an American citizen. I don't have any issues if we're going to put X amount of dollars towards that, and people, we pay into that. I don't have a problem with that. The problem, what you just mentioned, we're giving money to other countries that hate America. We're giving money to other locations that has no benefit to the American people. When they were doing Doge, Elon Musk and Doge, they found out that they were giving, I think it was like $32,000 to an opera, a transgender opera. How does that benefit us? Why are we spending that money for that?
Okay, so we're talking paradigm shifts. In my opinion, everything's going in the right way because, again, all these things that we're talking about, you know, they're losing momentum. Yes, they're still in place, but they're losing momentum. And in order for an idea to have substance, to have foundation and grounding, it has to have the will of the people or it dies out. And one idea that I see that's dying out is the globalist war agenda. Wars are not the cool thing to do anymore. You know, after Pearl Harbor, our boys couldn't sign up fast enough. After 9/11, our boys couldn't sign up fast enough. Today, no one's going for that. No one's taking that bait. And what I'm trying to say is, yes, we're involved in military conflicts around the world today. Yes, we are. But there is minimal, if any, support for these things in the public sphere going forward. And in my opinion, we're watching a phase out. What do you think?
As far as the phase out, as far as the military,
what I mean is
joining?
That wars are losing the people no longer support the war agenda. And in order for these globalist wars to continue, people have to support it. If the support isn't there, nobody wants us in these engagements anymore.
Right.
And what I'm saying is that the will of the people will eventually, that's the first step in phasing something out.
I think a major part of that was Ukraine, when we were pouring billions and billions of dollars into Ukraine, and there was no checks and balances on it. I remember Rand Paul was on the floor, was asking, said, before we approve this money going to Ukraine, can we get a ledger to let us know where the money is going to be spent? Are they going to ever pay us back? And what was highly interesting, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and the rest of them came back and said, no, you can't get that. We're just going to give them the money so they can continue fighting against Putin. And you talk about the globalists. This is strictly my opinion on this global agenda. And you might agree with me. This global agenda, I believe when Joe Biden was in office, they wanted to create a global conflict because they need the conflict on the planet. Because if they don't have conflict, they don't have anything to run on to say, hey, we're going to do this for you, do that for you. And I think they were purposely trying to get Putin to set off a nuke. This is just my personal opinion. Of course, I don't have Tucker access.
No, your opinion's spot on.
Yeah, so I think that they were purposely trying to edge him on to push it, because when I found out that Putin and Zelensky they were about to have a meeting together to talk about a peace deal to stop the war, the Biden administration came in and said, no peace deal. You're not going to. We get just the opposite with President Trump. President Trump is saying you need to work out a peace deal. Nothing else matters. So we're seeing completely different opposite spectrums of all this. And I think you're spot on when you're saying that we're seeing a shift, because we truly are seeing a shift. Because now we don't even really hear about Ukraine. They're still having some conflict over there, but we don't hear about it any longer because the left, the Democrats, are not in control to constantly push money to them to try to keep the war going. President Trump is trying to end it. Same thing, not to get into a big thing about it, but Iran. Same thing with Iran.
Now, feel free to talk about it, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Joe Biden, Joe Biden sent money into Iran. They didn't have no issues with it. Obama sent money to Iran. They had no issues with it. They've been known that they want to create a nuke to nuke the world. And they're doing it for religious reasons. They're not doing it because someone's attacking them. They're doing it for religious reasons. So I agree. We're seeing a paradigm switch, and President Trump is the one who's actually pushing it. He's implementing it.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. There was an intent and an interest amongst our political class to initiate wars, and I think absolutely you're right. They were putting Putin in a pressure cooker, hoping that he would react adversely, and then our boys are taking on the million-man Russian army in the Siberian forest. That is not a scenario that we want. But absolutely, because if you look at past wars, the Vietnam War, the Gulf of Tonkin, there is a theory coming out. The Gulf of Tonkin was the spring event, the kickoff event that caused the Vietnam War. But now there are people, credible people, coming out and saying that that Gulf of Tonkin event never happened. It was a figment of the imagination of the press. They needed something for the war to happen. And as a result of that, 55,000 American GIs died and 3 million Vietnamese. And so these tactics need to be exposed, and these interests.
Now, I agree. I mean, you know, we've heard the same thing similar to Pearl Harbor, right? They said they knew it was going to happen. I mean, there's so many different stories. I wasn't alive during that time. I wasn't there, but I've heard multiple stories from every angle. They said they knew that they were coming. They allowed it to happen. They said they knew 9/11 was going to happen. They didn't prevent it from happening. We've heard multiple stories about all of them. So that's all I can go on is the stories that I've heard. I can't give you an educated answer if it's true or not.
Okay, so you bring up another fascinating subject, and this is something that I cannot get my mind away from. We are in the time of AI, and I know there's a greater debate on AI, but I'm going to talk about the good things about AI. Right now, you can have a history teacher sit down and pull newspapers and log journals and journal entries and court documents, and he can tell the story of history using AI that is authentic. And these guys are doing this stuff, and they're doing it. There are some that are doing without any bent at all, not a leftist bent, not an otherwise slant, just boom, here is the history for you. And these videos, these AI videos, are absolutely incredible. They're better than anything the History Channel ever produced. And soon we're going to see this collection of History Channel vids just go by the wayside, which they all had an anti-American leftist bent to them. And so there's a channel right now called Incredible History. And what they do is they tell the story of the Spanish conquistadors. But the truth is, I think they should be called Spanish liberators, which is a longer conversation. And all this history professor teacher did was he just simply looks at the log journals, the diaries, the ship logs, and he tells the story from that. It's so authentic. It is the most fascinating channel. And there's 101 other channels just like it. I'm going to go on just a little bit more. Okay, American Revolutionary War, right? In the past, historians kept us just narrowed down on troop movements, troop tactics, casualties, how to supply the troops. They never gave the overarching picture of why these wars happened. What were the historical events? And they didn't do that because they didn't want us to know, because they were putting us in the same quagmire. But now these videos are coming out, actually videos where they defend the founding of the country. You know, they defend it. They don't bring up all these leftist talking points. They just say, here's what happened in the American Revolution. And I spent my whole weekend watching these videos. What? Yeah, I don't know. Are you coming across this? That's a major paradigm shift. I think that the leftist bent, the leftist influence from Hollywood and the media is dying on a vine.
I think that's, you know what? You bring up a really good point. The AI has been an awesome tool. For example, just really quick, when the whole thing about the socialists that's happening in our country right now becoming a major issue, I went on to AI and I was asking AI a question about, is there a difference between social programs and socialism? Asking AI. And I did a little short video on it, and AI came back and said there's a complete difference. You have social programs, which is our roads, our streets, our lights, first responders, et cetera, even the military, but it's not socialism. So AI has a place. And when it comes to creating videos using AI, you are spot on, because they're so good. 2 years from now, I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to go 2 years. Most of the time I like to say 5 years, but 2 years from now, people are not going to know if they're watching AI or not. I say 2 years. It's more than likely going to happen within the next 6 months, because some of it today, you don't know. Is it a camera crew? Did they actually shoot this? It's getting that good.
And, you know, again, I mean, the reason that we had, for example, you said, I don't know the truth about Japan and Pearl Harbor. None of us do. We're purposely kept in the dark, but it's coming because they can't stop it. Because these weekend warriors They are combing through the B sections of the New York Times and finding all the truth nuggets. It's going to be really amazing, and I think we're going to be shocked with a lot of things that we learn about our history. But let's go ahead and talk about current events. We have an epic showdown in the Texas Senate race between James Tallarico and Ken Paxton. Tell me how you see this going down.
I don't think James Tallarico has a chance.
But you see these stats they're putting out. They're putting out these polls showing him with a whopping lead and all this nonsense.
I mean, you know how many polls they said, for example, how many polls they said that Hillary Clinton was beating President Trump? They had her at 98%. I mean, even the polls in 2024 had Kamala Harris way above President Trump in most of the polls. So I'm not sure that I've never been polled on these. But James Tallarico, I think he's basically shooting himself in the foot because my personal opinion about him, he's another socialist. And a lot of these socialists, they have a different view on what God should be. I mean, he came out and said God is non-binary. He said there's 6 genders. The most thing that he loves in the world are trans kids. What? And this guy, he wants everyone to believe that he's a Christian. And because he'll come back and say, well, people say that they come at me because they say I'm not the right type of Christian. Oh, there's only the Christian of the Bible. Now, we can take it and twist it how we want to, but he is completely gone off the deep end. And on top of that, go ahead. Sorry.
No, please. You go ahead, please. No, you keep talking.
I was going to say on top of that, why is he the candidate and not Jasmine Crockett?
Go ahead. Finish that point. I don't know where you're going with that.
I mean, the reason why I bring it up because you have the Democrats and they're constantly talking about, and really quick, because this goes into play with it with James Tallarico and Ken Paxton, the redistricting took place. And when it took place here in the state of Texas, they said it was racist. And they said it was racist because it was taking away black voices. Now, ever since I've been voting in the United States of America, I've only been represented by other Americans. I had no idea. I didn't even care about the color. It wasn't even something I even thought about. And the only reason why it came up is because of them. But James Tallarico is a white man. So why did they go with him and not Jasmine Crockett if the Democrats keep screaming that black people need to have representation?
I don't think you're supposed to ask those questions. They sort of expose too much. If you look at
you have a point.
I mean, Ken Paxton he is the perennial underdog that is impervious to defeat. I mean, if you look at him, he started out as simply a state representative, and he immediately became in the crosshairs of Karl Rove and George Bush at the height of their popularity. And here we are today. He's finished off Karl Rove. He's finished off the Bush family, the Bush legacy in the state of Texas. You know, they launched an impressive where they tried to get him out of office. You know, and that was a massive effort, right? When they tried to get him out of office, and what's that?
I was just going to say when they were
launched an impressive impeachment campaign against him, and he survived that. I mean, he was an underdog. They had all the guns targeted at him, and now he's taking on James Tallarico, and they're telling us he's a slight underdog or whatever. But I just find that man to be impressive, and I don't know. I feel like if there was a Mount Rushmore of Texas, you'd have to put Sam Houston, Stephen F. Austin, and then possibly him up there.
So when I first moved to Texas, I was just learning. I'm still learning a lot about Texas after being here for 7 years. And when I first moved here, we were locked down because of the pandemic. But I remember when they were trying to impeach Ken Paxton. I had never heard of Ken Paxton. And I just happened to be at the state capitol that day because they said a whole bunch of liberals are going to state capitol. I'm like, okay, let me go see what's going on. And I end up in the chambers when they were discussing about impeaching him. And I was asking the people, I said, why are they trying to impeach him? And of course, I'm talking to liberals, these leftists, and they're saying, oh, because he embezzled money. They said all this stuff about him. And I'm like, really? And come to find out, when this is something that I realized, that if the left is saying all these things about you, I would question it, because they make up a lot of stuff because they don't want you there, because he's a Republican and he was actually siding with President Trump. That's where the main problem came in, because he was siding with President Trump. If he was siding with the Bushes, if he was siding with, the establishment, then they would have left him alone. He would have been perfectly fine. But because he sided with President Trump, that's where the problem came in. And ever since then, I started paying attention to Ken Paxton. And you're right. I mean, I've actually met him. I've talked to him, and he's actually, I would say he's an honorable man, and he does what he says he's going to do, if he can do it.
One of the, and I'm going to jump right to the next fascinating paradigm shift, and that is the fact that today the Clintons are no longer a national name. I would consider them largely damaged material, largely damaged goods. But what's interesting about you is that the thing you share in common with with the Clintons is the great state of Arkansas. Arkansas is where they began their criminal crime spree, and you were there when it started.
Yes, I was there when they had this program, and if I remember correctly, because I was a young man at the time, I was just in my early 20s, my late teens, and I remember they started up this prison program. I'm pretty sure you've heard about it. Everyone's aware that the Clintons did the prison program in Arkansas.
Tell us what it is.
And I'll never forget it.
What was it?
Okay, so what it was is that they created this prison system because they needed to lock up a lot of people. And what ended up happening is that they created prisons. And to my understanding, those prisons are still there. They created a whole bunch of prisons close to the border of Texas and Arkansas, inside of Arkansas, as far as the eye can see. Well, prisons, they're big business. In order for a prison to make money, you have to have occupants. You have to put people in there. I have relatives that got locked up during that time in the prison system. And while that was happening, Hillary Clinton, now it's been reported multiple times, I'm gonna have to say allegedly, you know how we have to do it, right? Allegedly, she was bleeding a lot of these prisoners and selling their blood. Canada was taking in a lot of that blood, and the blood that they were taking in, they found out that it was tainted, had HIV and a whole bunch of other stuff in it. And they said, look, we can't take this. You need to give us blood that doesn't have all of this. They just kept feeding it to them. So all that program went away. But the one thing that really stood out to me is when I was in Arkansas as a young man, I was working an electrician job. And I remember one of the electricians just came up from working those prisons. And he says, I've never seen anything like it. He said there was prisons as far as the eye can see. And he says at the time, there's nobody in them. And I didn't know what he was talking about. I was just like, what? All these prisons? He said it looked like they're getting ready to lock up people like it's like the end of the world type lockup. That many prisons, large prisons, like homes, but prisons. And then all of a sudden, the Hillary program started up. The Clinton program started up with the prison system. And then thousands and thousands. And that was during the time, if I'm not mistaken, when Joe Biden talked about the predators. Said we have to get these predators off the streets of America.
It's amazing times. We're sitting here talking about the days of the Bush family. We're talking about the days of the Clinton family. They were massive legacies. They were in our living rooms every night via the Sean Hannity show or the Anderson Cooper show, right? And they're gone by the wayside. I'm putting all my money on the country, on the USA. Everything in this conversation, where we've kept this conversation, is about ideas, because ideas come first. Everything else is downstream from ideas. And all ideas, from taxes, from the war agenda, from the retirement of these old legacy figures like the Clintons and the Bushes, all ideas are flowing in the right way, in my opinion. I know, and I put it this way, often what I say is, in our past, we were one step forward, two steps back. Today, we're two steps forward, one step back. That's how I see things right now.
No, I completely agree. And I'm really I'm really excited, and I'm really happy that President Trump is the president in the White House for the 250th birthday of America. I mean, it's really interesting how that played out, because 2020 took place and I was angry. I was mad. I'm like, what in the world just happened? But now hindsight 2020, look back at it, and President Trump is the president for the birthday of America, the 250. We couldn't plan that any better.
I hammered a 12-pack on 2020. I couldn't take it. I called my cousin. I'm like, oh, they're winning another one, you know?
Yeah, actually it was. And I'll never forget that night when it was taking place. I put a comment on Facebook, and I just put a comment. I didn't say anything about the election. All I said was, from what I remember, because I don't remember exactly how I said it, but I remember saying that something is off here. Something is not right. Is it just me, or is anybody else seeing this? That's all I said. Pretty vague, right? I could have been talking about anything. Before 4 hours later, and it was just a comment. I had never seen anything like it. 4 hours later, there was more than 14,000 comments on that post. Just a simple post. 14,000 had already reached 8 million people. 4 hours. As a result of that, Facebook decided to ban me for 30 days. For 30 days. And that's all I said. Something doesn't seem right. I didn't say anybody was doing something, no wrongdoing. I just said something didn't look right. And for 30 days, I was banned.
It was a time my cortisol was just flaring. I was getting sick regularly because of my cortisol spikes. They were going for it. What their goal was, they dropped the Wuhan on us while they were implementing red flag laws, while they had the FEMA camp set up, while they were pushing the vaccine. And we all know that they wanted to get that mandatory, and they wanted to do it to our kids first. While they were pushing the masks on us, everything was about control and taking away our freedoms, locking us in our house for a decade plus because of the Wuhan flu. And, Trump introduced warp speed, and he got a lot of flack for that. But the truth is what he was doing was he was giving you can't always go upstream. You sometimes have to go with the water. He was going with the water. He was doing a rope-a-dope, a prevent defense, getting a vaccine out there so that he could get us out of our houses. And it wasn't their vaccine, which probably had who knows what kind of toxins in it. So again, I think we dodged a bullet in that year.
No, I completely agree. And you know what President Trump did, Operation Warp Speed, for exactly what you just said, to give us an option, not to force it onto us, but to give us an option. Let's work on it. We have an issue. Let's work it out. That's what President Trump's agenda was. He made it clear. The problem came into place when they did the okie doke to President Trump, to the country in 2020. They were actually able to take control. You have Fauci, which, oh my goodness, Fauci, when we talk about Fauci, and the rest of them saying that you have to put on a mask, you have to show your vaccine papers, and they're quick to call President Trump the fascist. I mean, really, help me understand that one. And then after pushing the vaccines onto everybody, you can't hold a job. People were losing their jobs left and right. People couldn't go to a movie theater. People couldn't go to dinner. They did this to us. And then they were saying that you had to be forced to take it. And then people got upset with President Trump because President Trump came up with Operation Warp Speed. But that's not the reason why President Trump came up with it. He came up with it, again, so that we could have a choice. Which brings me to this point here. We're now President Trump's second term. President Trump and ICE. If I can bring this up really quick. ICE. President Trump, his administration has these detention centers for people that came unlawfully, mind you, into the country. He's not rounding up black and brown people like they want people to believe. He's not doing that at all. He's rounding up people that came into the country unlawfully, that have committed crimes, heinous crimes, That's who he's getting, and he's putting them in these detention facilities. The left, they're calling these detention facilities prison camps, concentration camps. They're going to, if they get into power, God forbid they do, but if they get into power, they're going to take those facilities and they're going to actually become concentration camps. But they're not going to be for illegals that came into the country. They're going to be for American citizens. And because they've already said President Trump's been deporting American citizens, locking up American citizens. And they're going to say, well, you didn't say anything when President Trump was doing it. Don't say nothing now. There's a connection there. And I'm only saying it because there's a pattern. God forbid it actually happens. I hope that I'm wrong. I want to be wrong. But just like Operation Warp Speed, they took that. President Trump did it because he did something positive, trying to give people an option. Just like here, he's doing something positive, trying to get the criminals off the streets of America. They take it and they do just the opposite with it.
Yeah. So one last thing I want to talk about. You talked about how you were shut down on YouTube for a month. And what we now see is the liberation of information largely via Twitter, via X. And I think this is a momentous change. I want to give one example, one we talked about already. For example, why did Japan bomb Pearl Harbor, right? So that question's posed on X, and the question's posed, and then you have to look in the comments, and people are posting articles and videos and stories that I never saw before. And what they do is they show this argument that basically that there was I will say like a globalist banker-led influence that was going after Japan because they were largely nationalist in nature, and they were trying to get them to agree to the globalist agenda. This globalist agenda has been in place for centuries, and the Japanese were resistant to that, and so they were getting their oil supplies cut off and other things, and there was a pressure they were trying to pressure China into war with Japan. And so the whole idea was that Japan would go on offense and then pull back into a defensive position. But my point being, I don't know if that's true or not. But this liberation of media is causing me to question everything that I know. And I have a feeling at the end of this journey that we're on, we're going to find the real truth in these things. Tell me what it means to you, the fact that today you can go on X, you can go on Twitter, and you can pretty much find anything that you need.
I think that's the way it should be. I think we should be privy to all of the history that our country has gone through, even the world. I don't think we should be prevented from knowing any of it. I mean, that's how we don't repeat it, right? And I like the fact that I can go on X and I can find out information hours, if not days, before the mainstream media even talks about it. So I love the fact that information is flowing freely for a change. Remember when President Trump was in office the first time, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, the major three, they were blocking any information that they did not want people to know. And now we're seeing an explosion of freely available information that's getting to everybody. And I find it interesting too, where some of the information that we've known to be true, now they're trying to change it and say that it never happened. I think you mentioned that earlier. Oh, it never happened. It never happened. For example, in the UK, just to go along with all of this, the UK, there was these rape gangs that were going after white females. And these were Muslims that came into the country. Been happening for years. I've known about it for years. Now, all of a sudden, they said it never happened. It never happened. How do you show us all the information? We know the information. Now they're saying it never happened.
Yeah, I mean, what's happening right now is in the past, our people were told it was command and control. We'll tell you what to think, and then you think it. That's what we were taught in grade school with your social studies books. Command and control. We'll tell you what to think, and then you think it. Right? That's how we were fed and taught and learned and developed. But now what's happening, because of questions like the one you just presented, questions where we don't have the answers, our media or the world, I don't know, it's forcing us to use our cognitive abilities. We're having to stretch our mind, stretch our mental resources, do the work. And that's a massive exercise in a good way. That's where we want people to be. We want them thinking twice, 3 times about things. And
Yes.
and I don't know. I find it to be a great development.
You know what, Chris? I think you're absolutely right, and I think that's why a lot of people, I would have to say, are tuning into broadcasts like yours, because we're all up on the liberal media, the mainstream media, lying to us. This is what we want you to know. We're not going to tell you all the information. We'll give you what you need to know, and this is it. But people are getting shows like yours, and they're getting the information that they're not getting from any place else. That's the point. That's the point. And the information is available to us now, where it wasn't before. And you hit on something really good too a minute ago. That it's going to shake up a lot of things when the truth starts coming out. But they're going to try to fight it. They are.
I think they're in a bad way right now. They're going to try to fight it, but I think they look pathetic and absurd and obvious when they do. So,
I agree.
Listen, it was an incredible hour. I really enjoyed it. Again, I'm going to put my money down on America just because of this interview right here. I think the best is yet to come. I think great things are in store. And I really appreciate you bringing the content that you bringing it to the masses. We need more guys like you and less guys like Anderson Cooper.
And more guys like you. Hey, thanks for having me on.
Thank you, sir. Will Johnson, correct?
Yes, sir.
With United America First.
Yep. Unite America First.
United America First. Very good to meet you, Will. Thank you for being on the show. I look forward to meeting you in person very soon.
Absolutely.
Have a great day. This is Chris Heasley with The Chris Heasley Show. We will be back next week with one more hot topic.